functioning, they live for the fame, they break their name. They say it in vain, they all feel the same. It can't be this way. No, it can't be this way. Can't live with this pain. I need you right there. Can you come back and say the wars and easy
What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about how to handle confrontation. A lot of people are obsessed about winning arguments, about being capable to handle confrontation. People are afraid of being disrespected. People are afraid of somebody saying some sly shit and getting away with it because we are too afraid to confront them. And we hate these kinds of things. We hate dishonest relationships. We hate being secretly bullied or ostracized without knowing it. We hate being abandoned. And we are afraid of confrontation because it's kind of like a head-on collision with facing rejection. So it is something that is very, very scary to us because it is like a close risk to full-on rejection, since in confrontation it is easy for somebody to get angry and it's easy for us to feel rejected by the other person. So naturally, biologically, we have a lot of fear towards it. It means war, right? It means some sort of battle, which means somebody will risk losing it. But really, in today's day and age, in today's era, there's no real danger to rejection. There's no full-on threat to our lives if somebody were to ostracize us. Since in today's interconnected world, we have everywhere to go, so we don't have to conform to a shit ton of social rules in order to be accepted and loved by a fixed community anymore. But it is still written into our psyche that we have to kind of never risk this confrontation and never risk being disrespected or disliked, because it could mean ostracization from the group. And if we don't have this power to risk that, we're going to become very people-pleasing people who lack personality, who lack character, and who don't have an identity other than to conform to other people. So you want to be able to handle confrontation. You're afraid of confrontation happening and you losing, you seeming like an idiot. So you rehearse conversations, you start to fantasize about how the confrontation would go in your head. When you're angry with somebody, you keep it to yourself and you start to think about what are the coolest things you can say to them when you do actually, one day, if there is a confrontation with that other person happens. But really, in today's day and age, the best strategy to this is to reprogram our brain to not fear the rejection any longer, to not fear the confrontation. You only obsess over it, you only keep thinking about it, you only keep fantasizing how to do it well because you assume there's a loser in the first place. But really, what will fix it is having no fear of the confrontation and being able to honestly express yourself with no shame during the confrontation. A lot of us are afraid to say when somebody has hurt our feelings because it gives them power over us. A lot of us are afraid to admit that someone did hurt us or caused us inconvenience because it's like giving them the win. And because of that, in confrontation, when we find that there are so many things to hide, so many vulnerabilities to mask, it gets scary to confront someone. We're afraid of losing. We're afraid of losing approval. We're afraid of losing appreciation and love from the people around us if we seem to be the inferior one of the confrontation. But the only way you're going to get better at confrontation is to have more confrontation. Is to risk it more even in the tiniest situations, so you build up your resilience for confrontation. And being able to be good at confrontation is such a valuable skill because you feel more comfortable in your own skin, you'll be more willing to offend people, which means you'll be able to stand for more things, even if it means standing alone. You're able to stand for what you believe in, you're able to hold on to your principles and morals no matter what anybody else thinks. You're able to be a more honest person, you're able to have better relationships and more proud of yourself as a person, since you're able to prioritize your own needs and wants with zero shame. And confrontation is absolutely necessary. Confrontation are small conflicts that avoid big explosions. If people never have these kinds of small conflicts, if people never had this small outburst of anger or being upset to the point where they feel like they have to confront the person head on and fully lay out everything for them. If we don't have these kinds of small outbursts, we will accumulate and it will lead to violence. It will lead to incriminating shit. So we should kind of be grateful that confrontation exists and that we have to face it eventually, because otherwise it's just going to become something humongous that we cannot handle. So What you want to do is to build your resilience towards confrontation by learning how to set your boundaries properly. And when you do that, you have way more practice in confrontation because you're able to have these kinds of small confrontations with other people when you express your boundaries, like saying no to other people when you mean it, like not lying when you don't like something, or when you don't want to go somewhere, you say I'm busy instead of just telling the person you don't want to go. These kinds of people-pleasing habits, these kinds of conformity makes you very afraid of confrontation because you feel like fundamentally if you're honest, if you're honestly expressive, you're going to get hurt and you're going to be ostracized. But really, all you're doing is connecting with the other person when you're honest, because that means you don't feel the need to perform or pretend when you're speaking to this other person. When I was growing up in secondary school, around 14 years old, I have this really, really good friend, and we were playing basketball with our class. Eventually, this friend passes the ball to a girl by throwing it, like a chest pass, and this girl doesn't know how to fucking catch the ball, so it just smacks her in the face. And her boyfriend, this big, young punk motherfucker, this guy who was older than all of us, this little shit, he came over and confronted my friend, and he threatened to beat him up, and he would walk around the class screaming at him from afar. And I just sat next to my friend, mumbling some bad words about him instead of standing up for him and doing anything tangible to defend him. And thinking back, after growing past this situation, it's just something I'm so ashamed of, because I watch all these hero TV shows, I learn all about heroism and standing up for other people just to be such a wimp when it came down to it. And I was upset with myself, I felt weak. I knew on the inside that, although I act that I wasn't afraid of this person, I couldn't stand up to him at that point because I was afraid of confrontation, terrified of it. And I started getting paranoid, like what if something happens to my family and I'm not able to confront other people? What if I'm in charge of somebody and I don't have the courage and the balls to do that? What kind of person does that make me? So I became desperate to want to conquer this fear of confrontation. I wanted the will to act. And this kind of shit happened over and over the years. Like, there was a girl who collapsed right in front of me in secondary school and I did absolutely nothing. Somebody from the back, another guy, had to run all over from the back of the class to come and pick her up while I just stood next to her and did nothing, which was extremely embarrassing, by the way. There was a class fight that broke up in junior college, in the first year of junior college, and I just stood at the side of the classroom even though I've learned to box for 2-3 years. This is the moment I'm waiting for, and I stood there and did nothing about it. And it is something that I'm very ashamed of, but at the same time I also understand that the stakes weren't high enough for me to have to do something about it. I was just ashamed that I couldn't take that initiative, even though I intrinsically tell myself that I would want to in those situations. So it turns out there's a discrepancy between what I would want to do and what I would do in certain situations, and I hated that. But because I was so afraid of appearing in this shameful manner, I decided to really focus on facing my fear of confrontation by learning how to set boundaries, by becoming a more competent person. I started going to the gym 6 times a week. I started to learn how to box relentlessly. And as I became more and more competent, as I had more and more social proof, I also became more and more comfortable in confrontation. And I would prioritize my own needs and wants, have my honest communication with people, force myself, sit on things that I want to say to another person without avoiding it, understanding that I have to do this if I want to be someone who isn't afraid of confrontation, and I would eventually force myself to do it. Like, for example, expressing to my father that he is overly aggressive sometimes and overly abrasive and doesn't communicate his feelings well. Expressing these kinds of things to the scariest person in my life really helped me with confrontation. Saying no to friends, telling a friend they are wrong, being honest to a friend who I felt was disrespecting me, voicing it out, and having no shame about it, knowing that is what I have to do if I want to be able to face confrontation. And over years of trying to develop this new habit of building up this resilience to actually face confrontation properly with less fear, despite my fear, that was what built my capacity to be able to take more initiative when push comes to shove, be able to confront people when it is needed. And it made me so much more comfortable in my own skin. It made me so much more comfortable when it came to things like public speaking and things like that. When you're under the spotlight, when you are in a position where you could be judged, you become so much more comfortable in your own skin when you become somebody who is more capable of expressing yourself honestly, somebody who isn't ashamed of expressing how they genuinely feel, somebody who understands that rejection isn't that deep. So overall, this ability to face confrontation, this constant fear of confrontation you have, this need to fantasize and rehearse conversations in your own head so that when it comes down to the confrontation, you're kind of more prepared for it. Really, it will be fixed with you just being honest, with you just being able to face rejection, even if you are in the most shameful manner possible. So stop fantasizing about how you can beat this other person and think of confrontation as just an honest expression. As long as you feel comfortable with it, everyone else would understand and kind of see it that you've won, because you have nothing to hide, you aren't afraid of rejection, and you carry yourself well, and you're comfortable in the conversation. So don't obsess about how you appear right now. Just build up your resilience to be more comfortable in those situations, be a more honest person, put yourself out there more, build up your social proof and status and competence, and understand that confrontation is necessary. It avoids humongous conflict by creating these little ones, and it makes you so much better of a person if you're willing to face it. So don't avoid confrontation, instead seek it, try to deliberately introduce it into your life, and from there you build your character up, you become so much more of a stable person, and you feel so much more contented and more comfortable in your own skin. If you want a community with like-minded people, link is in the description below. You got this, I love you. It's a battle.